So, hello everyone. Thank you for meeting with us today. My name is Aimee. I am the Lead Policy and Advocacy Fellow at SisterLove. And today we have Alex and Adrian joining us. We're going to be talking about queer identity, sexuality, and reproductive justice. So, first, I'm going to start by introducing both of them. So, Alex is an If When How Fellow at Spark Reproductive Justice Now, based in Atlanta. They are originally from Massachusetts and they found their home and community in New Orleans while they were introduced to RJ work in that framework while working at an abortion fund. And so they went to the University of Michigan Law School and expanded their skill set and gained a deeper understanding of dismantling oppressive systems by working at the intersection of reproductive justice and queer and trans liberation. So they have an awareness about how white supremacy, misogyny, and compulsory heterosexuality are deeply entrenched in the legal system. So thank you, Alex, for being here with us today. And
Thank you
we
for having
also
me.
Thank you. And we also have Adrian Xpression. So Adrian is the founder and owner of the Adrian Xpression brand. He has built a platform from the ground up that is centered on YouTube, but has also expanded into other online communities. As an advocate, Adrian uses his platforms to raise awareness about issues that affect minorities, specifically the Black and LGBTQ+ communities. Adrian's core goal is to use insight from personal experiences, as well as his skills as a writer, speaker, vlogger, musician, and overall creative to help change the world for the better. So, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, I wanted to give you both a chance to introduce yourselves if there's anything that I missed out that you would like people to know about you and like where they can find you on the internet. So I guess I will start with Adrian.
Well, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. And you can find me on like most platforms everywhere at Adrian Xpression, just the name that I have up there. And yeah, I just make a lot of different kinds of content. So you just filter through and find the stuff you like.
Okay. And what about you, Alex?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it for me also. You can reach me at alex@sparkrj.org.
Awesome. So thank you for being here again. And so I guess I'll start with the questions. So before I give you the first question, I just wanted to preface it with letting you know why I'm asking it. So I understand that coming out culture and the idea that everyone should come out can be problematic, but I'm simply asking this question so that if there are any queer youth watching, that they can be inspired by what you have to say and hopefully one day live in their truth. So I say all of that to ask, I'm going to start with Adrian. When did you realize that you were gay?
um, I want to say like in elementary school, like it was that young when I noticed I was like, something's a little different about me. And what's kind of crazy is that I feel like other people knew or were able to perceive certain things about myself before I was, especially given the environment that I was like super religious environment that I was growing up in. That they just did not allow for certain things to happen or for me to even think about certain things in a certain way. But like, yeah, there were kids calling me gay in elementary school before I even knew what gay was, you know? So it's just, but at the same time, I was feeling those things. It's just when you're that young, you just don't really have a word for it. At least I didn't. So yeah, that's from when I was like really young.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. And following up on that, I'm going to ask you the same question, Alex. When did you realize you were non binary?
Um, this is a little more tricky because I feel like when I was growing up, I didn't like have the language or the concept of non-binary. I knew like binary femininity wasn't really working for me. And then like when I got introduced to the concept of transness, it was very binary at that point too. So it's like, I don't know, binary masculinity not really working for me either. But then it was through like acquiring the language, acquiring the like studying queer theory or whatever, I was able to like understand myself through that like new lens. So it wasn't until college until I started thinking about it.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. Um, so this question is for Adrian. So you often online talk about your experiences growing up as a Black first generation American who is also queer and who grew up in the South. And so, how was growing up with all these different marginalizations? Like, what was that experience like for you?
It was like it at times it felt hard to center myself because on one hand you have like culturally my parents they're Jamaican, but and I love a lot of things about Jamaican culture, but it's that glaring thing that's there. You know what I mean? And so it's like you want to participate fully in so many different communities, and because of this one thing, it seems like you can't fully get there. Does that make sense? Like it feels like as close as you feel like you can get to these communities, there's still one thing that keeps you from fully relating to everyone there. So yeah, it was I had to really find a foundation for myself as a human, before I could fully lean into or fully explore certain communities. And that was like when far after I left college and stuff, that was when I finally found like the community, but growing up, it was very hard to like center myself because of the different nuances and rules and stuff that existed in all those communities that you listed. So yeah, it was very interesting to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Haitian, so I definitely, understand.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely understand how, like, as good as our cultures are, like, they are slow to embrace,
Correct.
anything that's not considered the norm. So, yeah, I definitely.
And you like really, I mean, there's certain, like I said, there's certain parts of like Caribbean culture, Jamaican culture I absolutely love. And it's just like, if we could just get over this one thing, I just think that people really don't understand how much simpler, like, and easier things could be if we just get over the things that are harming, like, so many of us,
Right. So this next question is for Alex. So from what I know about you, I know that you grew up in Massachusetts, but you currently live and work in the South. And so the South tends to be viewed as like slower to embracing LGBTQ plus rights. There are a lot of anti-trans legislation, as I'm sure you're aware of, that has been introduced in the South, and it seems like it's been slower to embrace the LGBTQ plus community than other areas in this country. So I wanted to know, how has your experience as a non-binary person been in the South?
So growing up in the Northeast, like people kind of hate on the South, like they kind of think of it as like backwards or less than, and like really unwarranted ways. So moving here and like getting involved in social movements here was like so formative for me because like people don't do social movement work this way anywhere else. Like people are fired up in a way that I've like never experienced before. At this point, like I have such deep roots here, like I don't see myself ever leaving. So I love the South. I'm gonna start with that. But yeah, I've only lived in like major cities. I lived in New Orleans and I lived in Atlanta, and like both those cities have a really deep queer and trans liberation history and really like vibrant communities in that department. So I honestly have had like so much joy and love and community and friendship come out of being non-binary and being queer in the South. There's definitely like times where like, you venture out of the city, you kind of think like, well, I look too queer. Like, am I gonna get hey, come to this gas station? Like, I hold my partner's hand, whatever. Like, there's definitely that feeling sometimes, but yeah, in the cities, it's been pretty much great.
Okay. Thank you for that. And it's unfortunate that you have to think that way, that you have to like anticipate anything that happens when you step outside of the city. So I'm hoping that, like the next generation coming up of queer activists can somehow change that, and that we can create a space where people can feel like they can be themselves and not worry about hate crimes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so this next question is for Adrian. So I'm somebody who engages with your work a lot. And from those interactions, you sometimes talk about your experience when it came to like cutting certain family members off.
Yes.
And you often talk about like finding your chosen family. So my question is, what advice would you give to a queer youth who's listening, who is realizing that they may need to cut ties with certain family members?
I would say to be kind to yourself during this process. It is extremely uncomfortable, even if you're like, I don't know. I think a lot of people use this. Oh well, it's your father or it's your mother or it's your whatever the situation may be. I think they use that as a way to be like, well, you should just stick there. You should just stay there and accept whatever mistreatment that you're getting because it's blood. And I don't agree with that at all. But I think you should be kind to yourself during this process because it can be uncomfortable no matter what, to remove yourself from these situations, especially if it's something that you've always known your entire life. Like it might be very difficult. So I don't know. I mean, the end goal should be, of course, protecting yourself and making sure that you're okay. But like, don't look at other people who have gone through the years of being uncomfortable and fighting with themselves over this. Don't look at those people where they're at right now and like compare themselves to your journey. Like, take it a step at a time, you know. But at the end of the day, I do think that if you're always finding yourself uncomfortable around certain people and it's not changing and they're not interested in changing, they're not invested in learning anything, it's best to protect your energy and to get out of there as soon as you can. But I always stress safety first. Like, there are some people who are financially, they're not in a place to be able to do that right now. And it just is what it is. So it's like, make it your goal. You don't necessarily have to like run and dip right now, especially if you don't have a plan right now, but keep that in your head and work towards it. And eventually you'll find yourself in a place where you're like, like a burden has been lifted. Like it would be everything that you're dreaming of right now, but just be strategic about it, because a lot of like the work that we're doing involves navigating. It just involves navigating this crazy society, and that's what we have to do 24/7. So it's a process, I think is what I would say. Like, it's a process and it will be okay.
Thank you for raising that. The point about, you know, how it's not safe for some people to just right now decide, you know what, I'm cutting off people.
Yeah, it's not at all.
Yeah.
Like, especially like I said, if you're financially dependent, or I mean, if your parents are like different kinds, like they're powerful too, you know, it's like you have to weigh all of those things out. But I think that's why chosen family is so important, because, you know, they're the ones who can be like, okay, you know, we can help you out. If you don't, you know, if you're lacking the resources, if you're lacking the help that could also come in handy too, you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so for Alex, so I'm a cis person and I've been trying to learn more about non-binary people and, you know, trying to uplift their voices when I can. And from all that I've learned, I've heard this term gender euphoria being thrown around. And I wanted to know if you could explain a little bit about what gender euphoria means and if you feel that way.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, Adrian, that last answer just like, oh, hit me right in the heart. Oh my God. But yeah, gender euphoria, and I'm really glad you're using that framing instead of the gender dysphoria framing, because that's tied to the like trans medical model, which is its own layers of problematic history. But anyway, so gender euphoria is like kind of hard to describe. It's like when in your like body something feels right, like you're just like, this is right, this is correct, this feels good. And there are like some obvious ones, like a lot of like trans masc folks, like myself included, like the first time you put on a binder, you're like, oh, like that's amazing. But then there's like also like weird little things. Like I remember like so vividly the first time someone like used the right pronouns in a work email for me, and I just like started crying at my desk. Or like the first time my partner called me handsome, I was like, hey, I'm handsome, thank you. Yeah, it's just that feeling of like, yes.
I understand exactly. Well, I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. Like when things like fall into place finally, like okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So Adrian, you know, we're currently talking about what is has been traditionally not considered the norm in society. But now, LGBTQ plus people are becoming more mainstream and people are learning about it. So this next question I have for you is about your appearance and like how you present. And so from my interactions with your work and like the pictures I've seen of you, you are somebody who presents in a way that is not considered the norm. Do you ever feel vulnerable when you are out and about in Atlanta? And as a follow up to that, how do you protect yourself?
Well, here comes the chosen family again. But like, I keep my niggas around. I mean, I just keep my people around me. I keep my people around me. You know what I'm saying? No, but I think it's just, I think experience, first of all. I think just like common knowledge kind of things. Also, but also knowing where I'm going. Like, I just need to know what's the vibe of the place that I'm going to be at. Like, let me know what, and usually it doesn't matter. Usually I'm in a place which is where I like to be, where it just doesn't matter, where how I present is not a focal point because it's just how I'm dressing. It's just how I'm dressing, And so I try to just keep myself in those kinds of environments. But sometimes, you find yourself in environments that are not that welcoming. And so, I mean, I got me a couple, I keep me a little blade on me, I keep some stuff on me, just to protect myself. I don't think I'll ever need to really use it, but it's I just have it just in case I need to get into some stuff, just in case. But I mean, I'm not someone that's like unrealistic. If I need to run, I need to run. It's just like, I just think that it's a combination of knowing where you're going, making sure that making sure you're using all types of safety methods especially if you're going to be drinking and all that type of stuff. Like, make sure you have your friends around you who actually care about you. That's a very big thing. And also, just staying proactive. If you do find yourself in a place where it's uncomfortable, just keep your head on a swivel and keep moving. I could have definitely been more careful, especially like in college. I could have definitely been more careful, but it's just awareness, I think. And I think as you move through like society, or as you move through these environments, presenting the way that I present, or just being the way that you are, LGBT or whatever, like with more experience, I feel like it's easier to navigate that stuff. But yeah, definitely. I know that unfortunately how I present is a big deal to certain people when it really is just clothes. It's just clothes, but people don't see it like that.
Yeah. And thank you for lifting the fact that, it's just unfortunate and like frustrating, quite frankly, that so many people have to worry about keeping strapped, like having something on them that they can use to defend themselves.
I don't have no strap or anything like that. But what I'm saying, I do have I got some blades and stuff. Like I'm ready,
Right.
But who wants to do that? Who wants to have their night out turn into like, oh, now I got to stab someone, or now I got to run or something, like no one wants to do that. And it ties into what you're saying. It's like, wow, I wish I lived in a society where it did not matter, because it truly doesn't. It truly does not, That's how.
Thank you for that. And you're right, it is just clothes. I don't understand why we gender clothes.
Yes.
And so for Alex, so I've been trying to do research and trying to learn as a cis person more about what being non-binary means. And I know that it can mean different things to different people. So what does being non-binary mean to you?
I mean, I spoke a little bit to this earlier, but yeah, like neither of the binaries felt correct. I tried them both out, and I was like, not for me. And it's really nice to kind of like sit in the middle, and you can take like the good things from each side, and then like some whatever's hanging out in the ether, and try to like reject the toxic parts of each side until it just like feels correct. I don't know if that makes sense.
It definitely does.
It definitely does. Thank you. So Adrian, this question's for you. So you have an online presence, which I think is pretty amazing. That's how I found you. Um, and so, how have your different experiences, like what you talked about with cutting family members off, growing up in an immigrant household in the South, like how has that shaped who you are, and how has that led to where you are today?
Well, for sure, the repression that I felt in childhood and adolescence definitely had a lot to do. I mean, even if I didn't think that at the time, it definitely had a lot to do with the fact that I was just so loud on social media. Like it definitely, because I feel like now that I'm looking back, I feel like I was just so stifled in every other area of my life that I needed an outlet, And I'm thinking, I just think about all the other LGBT people who may not have had access to another outlet. And I'm just like, it's hard to survive when you don't have outlets, especially if you're being controlled and repressed in every other aspect of your life. So I think it definitely, like the just the intensity of my childhood and my adolescence had a lot to do with what, my worldview, and also the fact that I guess I'm here now, like the fact that I have an online presence is just like, I think I was definitely pushed, like Adrian Xpression, I was pushed to express myself, because if I didn't, I think it would have been a disaster. Like, I think it would have been a disaster.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so, Alex, this is switching gears a little bit to talk more about reproductive justice. So I'm curious, like, what led you to this work?
So reproductive justice is like, as a framework, has been so pivotal for me, because it really put together the pieces of like, we live in a complicated world, and if you want to control like the way that you move through it, and the way that like you have children, don't have children, raise your children, like we need to address all sorts of things. It's not just like pro-life versus pro-choice, which I think is how it got framed a lot as I was coming up through like grassroots organizing or whatever. So that was like really pivotal in terms of like integrating how I understood everything with how I understood everything else. Like it's all interconnected. And yeah, also when I was working at the abortion fund in New Orleans, which is incredible, everyone check them out, called NOF. I remember feeling like I had to like check my identities at the door and be like, this is a straight women issue, and I am not that. But like really like leaning into the theory of reproductive justice and being like, oh no, I can show up as me. Queer and trans people need RJ as much as anybody else, and we need to be talking about it. We need to be centering those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for raising that, because I feel like reproductive justice, as you mentioned, has definitely been viewed through a lens of being like a straight white middle class like issue, and it involves all of us, and we should all be concerned about being able to access like reproductive health services, for example. So thank you for framing it that way. And so, Adrian, as you have been able to reach a wide audience through your different platforms, I'm curious, have you encountered anyone or any people who have had an impact on you? And if you have, like, could you shout them out? Just let us know, like, who has influenced you?
Oh, wow. Who is, like, you're talking about like social media creators, or just like people?
Just anybody, but yeah, social media creators, writers, anyone.
Oh, it's one of them things where it's like, I would feel bad if I named just one person, but
Right.
I would definitely say that, I know this sounds really corny, but I think there were a lot. I don't know. It was mostly when I was younger, so it's like it's kind of hazy. Like the creators that were out then, because there are a lot of creators that I know now, and I really respect and love them. But the ones who like really, really influenced me to do what I'm doing now, were I definitely were watching them when I was younger and thinking about starting a YouTube channel, And I don't think a lot of them are still creating right now. So I don't want to single anybody out, but definitely people, like a lot of the creators who were out like like two, 2009 and that kind of area.
Mhm.
And I think because of how I was able to focus on how they were living and they're living out loud, and oh my gosh, like, will I be able to do that one day? And like, because of that reaction that I had to them, I think I wanted to make sure, because I knew how lonely it felt to, so I wanted to make sure that no one else, of course, I'm not Superman, but like, I just wanted to make sure that no one else would feel that lonely. And so that's kind of what I wanted to build my platform off of. So I kind of I know I beat around the bush with that question.
No, I definitely understand it's a hard question to answer.
It's so
And
many
yeah, and I'm sure like all those people that you're not necessarily naming, but have had an impact on you, I'm sure that like it's felt, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
So Alex, can you delve into why it's so important to understand the intersection of reproductive justice and queer and trans liberation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like this is really like an obvious statement, but I think a lot of people do not do that obvious logic. But queer and trans people can get pregnant. They are having sex in ways that can result in a pregnancy. They need access to the full range of reproductive health care, and also all the other issues that impact your bodily autonomy generally disproportionately impact the queer and trans community. So it's extra important to consider how that community is being impacted by all these policies and by all the social conditions in the world.
Thank you for that. And so the next few questions are for both of you. And so I'm going to ask this question. I guess Adrian can start since Alex just finished. So what does reproductive justice mean to you?
I feel like we're going back to this theme of awareness, because especially with what Alex brought up, because every time you hear ridiculous or phobic, bigoted arguments from heterosexual people or cis hetero people, it usually centers around some bullshit like, oh well, y'all can't have no kids, y'all can't. It's always something like that, and it's like, wow, y'all actually have no idea. You have no idea about what goes on in our communities or about the resources that we definitely need. Like you said, it's disproportionately affecting us. So I think it centers at the end of the day, it centers around making sure that people are aware of the issues and aware of what these communities need and fighting for them and fighting for the resources. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess, Alex, you've kind of alluded to your answer, but what does reproductive justice mean to you?
I see reproductive justice as a really beautiful way to think about the world and a really beautiful way to think about what I want to do politically. I'm a very strategic person in terms of I think of social movements as 4D chess. I want to be addressing all the different nuances of what's contributing to hierarchical oppression and what's contributing to people not having their material needs met or people just not being able to do exactly what they want to do in society. So having this as the human rights framework that integrates all different levels of things that can impact your autonomy, it's just a really useful lens for that. It's really a strategically useful lens because it lets you work not in an issue silo. It lets you work on a bunch of different things at once because that's what we need to be doing. We can't fix this by doing incremental steps. We have to have a multifaceted attack.
Thank you for that. And so this is another question for the both of you. How has your experience been when it comes to seeking sexual and reproductive health care services? And I guess I'll start with Adrian.
It has been, especially for a queer Black guy, it has been all right, I got to know how to navigate this. It's been okay, let me ask my friends, where y'all go, what y'all doing? And finally, a couple months into moving into Atlanta, I was able to get to what I need, when it comes to that. But it's definitely, it feels like a treasure hunt And I feel like it shouldn't feel like that. You know, to get the resources that you need, whatever it is, to get the treatment that you need, to get the testing that you need, whatever it is. But I mean, Atlanta here, they make it much easier than in other places, especially. But it's because they know how hard it can be for us here. So Atlanta does make it easier, but if you don't know where the things are, what you're doing, it can be a little tricky.
Yeah, and I guess, Alex, how has your experience been? Or have you already answered? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I love the description of it as a treasure hunt, because I kind of see it as like every time you walk in, you're kind of taking the temperature of the room and like, am I just going to circle the F and like let it go in this doctor's office? Because I will do that if I don't want to have to like explain things to you. And also it's like a really common experience of like a lot of trans and non-binary people are like, I have to educate my provider on how to respect me, and it's just not worth it sometimes. And a lot of people like put off care because of that, or just like, I don't know, just accept substandard care or not ask for what they want or what they need. That being said, like I've had some really cool providers who like, especially in like the reproductive healthcare zone, who like could not give less of a crap about like who I'm sleeping with and what gender they are, like, which is very refreshing, because sometimes it's just like that really awkward silence when you're like explaining why you don't need birth control or like whatever. Like, are you sexually active? Yes. So do you want to talk about birth control? No.
But no, I get it, because like when you're in a place where it literally doesn't matter. What they're focused on is making sure that you're okay. Like what they're focused on is making sure that they understand exactly who you are, what you've been doing or whatever, just to make sure that you are getting the care that you need and none of the other shit matters. Like that is the best place to be at. That's the best place to be. Because there are many people who have had, especially like queer people, many people have had experiences where it's like, oh my gosh, my doctor doesn't even know what PrEP is. It's just like, this is a lot. Yeah.
And that's so, I'm sorry, Alex, did you say something?
Oh yeah, no, finding that like actual educated on these issues doctors, it's like a blessing.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention how like unfortunate it is that so many queer people, trans people, LGBTQ plus people in general have to like treasure hunt, like you both kind of alluded to in it. And one of the comments is, it says, it shouldn't be a treasure hunt to get the services that you need. And I think that's, yeah, like it shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to go through, those experiences. And that's so unfortunate. I also wanted to uplift that SisterLove does STI testing for free, and that's a service that we offer. So, if you know anybody who needs that, definitely like let them know. And so the next question kind of alludes to what I mentioned earlier. There have been many instances of anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that's been introduced in legislatures across the country. How has this negatively impacted you and informed your journey to self-acceptance in any way? And I guess Alex can start.
Okay. So me personally, I think the legislation just kind of pissed me off and lit a fire under my ass. Like, I'm going to fight this, because I'm not going to let the Alliance Defending Freedom or whoever is behind these campaigns, I'm not going to tell them anything. I'm not going to let them tell me anything about myself, because they don't know. And they don't know. They're just like spreading these like horrible lies and like medical falsities, and they're targeting children with this round of legislation, which is like uniquely horrible. And it's pissing. But I do understand that like seeing that all over the news, and it's just negative.
I'm sorry, has Alex frozen for you, Adrian?
Yeah, the screen is a little frozen.
Okay.
Wait.
Okay, they're back.
Shoot, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Could you just repeat the last sentence? I think people got the gist of what you were trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it can be disheartening to just see the negative news every day, but it's also really nice to see like the community rally around. Like, no, absolutely not. We're gonna fight this all we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that, but I think because of the things that I kind of talk about, or the content that I make is usually guided by the news. So I've had to been like, I've had to be like, okay, Adrian, like it's okay if you don't talk about these things in your content for for a while or for whatever. Like people know, that these things are going on. Address it when you can. Address it when you mentally are able to. And I think that's where I am right now. But as far as self-acceptance, I think maybe when I was a little bit younger and less experienced, it would have affected me more. But now I feel like it makes me accept myself more. Like, what's that? Like, like I want to fight, let's fight. But I can understand, like it can get to you. Like no one is invincible. But I think once you like monitor how much of it you take in, make sure you're aware of certain things that are going on, but like you don't have to like drink in every single, negative headline because it can get really like, okay, depressing,
Yeah. And so as the LGBTQ plus movement has developed over time, what do you think are the movement's greatest strengths and weaknesses? What do you think should be continued and what can be improved on? And I guess I can give you a moment to think about it, but I'll start with Alex.
Something I think that this movement was. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, my bad. The question was the LGBT community. My bad.
Yeah, I can rephrase. I'm sorry.
No. I was just.
Yes. So the question is about as the LGBTQ plus movement has developed over time, what do you think the movement's strengths and weaknesses are?
Okay.
One of the main strengths I see is like always usually like down to like fight and do the policy and do the like serious side of the work, but then there's also like a big element of just like joy and love and community. But that being said, I do think at least recently like it's taken a turn towards like it centers like cis white gay men in a way that's not always super productive and doesn't really pay homage to like the history of the movement, which was like very much started by Black trans people. So I think we need to like bring that history piece in and make spaces more like accessible to different types of people who aren't that kind of like stereotypical whatever. But yeah, but that being said, the queer and trans liberation movement is like a home for a lot of people and like a political home for a lot of people and a jumping off point for being involved in movement work. So I think it does a really good job of like bringing you in because it's like fun and you can be accepted and it's like you got all these different like ways to connect with people and find chosen family and find your people. But then also like, okay, now you have to care about issues.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you with that. I think that there's a lot of strength. There's a lot of, I think we've learned a lot during the past years. We've faced a lot. And I think we really, in certain ways, we really do look out for each other. We know the dangers that we have to face. Mm-hmm. But there's another side to it. Alex brought it up where it's like it does center like cis oneness. And there's divisions within the LGBT community. I mean, even some of the things that I hear, people say about in the community, people say about trans people, the invalidation of bisexual people. It's like there's a lot of like things within ourselves that we have to solve it. Like we have to work to solve, constantly work to solve it. Because I think that people who want to get rid of all of us take advantage of those divisions and try to tear us apart like that. But I think we just have to understand that all of us are at risk. Like And so when we try and shun like, oh, well, trans or oh, well, bisexual, oh, well, you know, like those divisions, it makes absolutely no sense because we are all in the same, literally in the same boat. So yeah, there's definitely good and there's definitely things that we need to work on.
Yeah. Thank you for, uplifting that, both of you. I think it's important to talk about, how cis whiteness tends to be centered and how there are so many people who are kind of left out of these conversations. I can think myself that I follow a lot of disabled queer people who have, uplifted the fact of like lack of accessibility. They've talked about the fact that they can't get married because their disability benefits may be taken away and things like that. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge, all facets of the community. So, given your years of experience in advocacy, and both of you, I believe, advocate in different ways. I know that Alex does it through like a legal lens, but Adrian, I think that you do something important, being on the internet and using your voice. So, like, given your experience, how has the landscape changed since 2020, when the Black Lives Matter movement took stage? And so, how has what happened in 2020 influenced the fight for LGBTQ plus rights? And I guess, Adrian, you can start.
I just think that, just off the top of my head, I think that the methods of organizing have been, like, they've been advanced. I think they've become more precise and effective because of, it's just like when all these marginalized groups are fighting, it's just like we go take notes. Like, we're gonna take notes on what works effectively and what doesn't. Like, and it's just, I think that because of the internet, because of the things that happen, and because of the organizing that has happened, it's just like learning. We have the ability to learn very quickly, based off of what other groups, marginalized groups, are doing. So I think that's one.
Yeah, and so Alex, I can say the question again if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is about how the landscape for in the fight for LGBTQ plus rights has changed since 2020, when the Black Lives Matter movement kind of took center stage.
I've definitely heard a lot more conversations about how we like reinscribed racial hierarchy within the queer community, which is so nice to hear because we were not talking about that 5 years ago. And also, I'm really impressed in how much of a moment like mutual aid and abolition is having in progressive spaces and in movement spaces. That's incredible. I'm like super on board for that. I like if we're not going to get taken care of by like our bigger structures, like we can come together and make communities to take care of each other. And I think that resonates especially well in queer and trans circles because we do have like the chosen family and like people want to have alternative family structures. So I'm super stoked to see mutual aid on the rise, super stoked to see people getting involved in abolition and thinking like, we don't need policing, we don't need prisons, we don't need the criminal legal system to keep us safe because it doesn't keep us safe. So that's like my major, like the way people are thinking about the issues has changed. But yeah, I'm also just seeing people get more involved in movement work, like wanting to volunteer, wanting to seek out these organizations and give time, give their skills, which is awesome. That might also be because I work in those spaces, so I have like movement goggles on, but.
No, I think that's really important. And the point you raised about mutual aid, I think it's been awesome to see, an explosion in people deciding to put their money and resources towards that as opposed to, other means, other organizations, and just helping the individual, I think is really powerful.
There's like, I think that some people may not have even known that some of these organizations even existed or the types of organizations even existed. So it's like, wait, what do you mean mutual what? Mm-hmm. I feel like legitimately, I feel like some people did not even understand or know like what. And then when they found out, it's like, oh yeah, of course, what do you mean? So it's just awareness, I guess, back to that.
And so I'm going to take it in a more positive direction for the rest of the questions that I ask y'all, because I think In my experience, I've seen a lot of discussions about how the media portrays like being queer as a negative thing, or where you're constantly seeing in media that shows queer people in pain. So I would like to take it in a more positive direction and uplift the fact that you know people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community can have fulfilling and happy lives. So I guess this is a kind of corny question, but if you could talk to your past self and give them some advice on this journey, what would you tell them?
Hmm. That's not a corny question at all.
um, yeah, and so whoever has an answer can answer first.
Alex, you
Yeah, I guess I can go. I mean, I'm thinking of like talking to like teenage Alex, and I was like kind of a stupid teenager. So I'd first say like, get your shit together, dude. Like, I'd lead with that, and then I think I was just really afraid of like the feelings I was having, and like, oh my God, no, I can't do that. Like, I absolutely can't do that. No, we're just gonna repress that. I would just say like the things that you're so afraid of and the things that you think are gonna make you unlovable are actually the things that you're gonna love most about yourself later. And you're gonna like build your passions around that, and you're gonna like structure your career around that, and you're gonna just be excited to live and stand and in your own truth.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's really good. Can you talk to my past self too? I would tell myself that there's nothing dangerous about defining your own world, because you've always had to live in other people's definition of the world, and look what it's doing to you. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's scary to step out there and make your own rules, and you're going to make mistakes. I mean, if that's what you're afraid of, you might as well get over that now. Like it but I think it's just like operating through life with other people's definition of what the world looks like, what the world is supposed to be, it has been forced upon you, but do not be afraid to go out there and define it for yourself. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think what you both said was just like gems and just amazing things. And I hope that, the people who are watching who are queer or, questioning, definitely take to heart what you just said. And so this question has to do with social media. Do you think social media has had a more positive or negative impact when you used it while you were kind of realizing that you were queer? Yeah. And so whoever, thinks of an answer first.
For me, it had a more positive impact. You're talking about like when I was like trying to find myself and trying to understand what, yeah, definitely it had a more positive impact, because I don't know how I would have been able to. I'm sure I would have been able to maybe later on in life, but I don't know how I would have been able to visualize what my life could look like. You know what I mean? Or what the end goal could be. Because when you're, especially when you are young, if you can't see a finish line, it becomes extremely depressing. It's like, oh, so this is going to be everlasting, even though you're going to grow up. But it's like because of social media, and of course there are negative effects to that. But because of social media, because of like we alluded to, like the creators who I was watching, like I was able to see, okay, like this can be, and most likely will be, just one part of my life that is really sucky right now. But in the future, I have something to look forward to, and I think that's the main thing. And it also gave me like an avenue, like I said, to express the thoughts that I felt like would be unsafe for me to express in my, everyday environment. So yeah, definitely more positive for me personally.
Yeah, I think it's nice to just like see yourself representation of your life. Am I frozen?
Yeah, you were for a second.
For a sec.
Yeah, I think Alex may be frozen for a moment. Let's give it a moment just to see if they come back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna give them a moment, so I guess I will move on to the next question and just give Adrian a chance to answer while Alex works out their internet connection. So, oh, I think they're coming back. Are you back, Alex?
Yeah, sorry. I think my internet just cut out for a second.
Yeah,
Should I
and so
answer the last question? Sorry.
yes, no problem. I'll say it again. Do you think social media has had a more positive or negative impact during that period of time where you were realizing that you were part of the LGBTQ plus community?
I think a positive impact because you can see people represented that you might not have in your real life, like people who are happy. But also like in terms of like getting like access to gender affirming care, social media is huge in terms of like you have to tell the doctor certain things, you have to be telling a certain narrative to get access to care, which should be changed, but that's unfortunately the case for a lot of people. So just like getting the script of like what to say to get the doctor to prescribe you testosterone, like this is how you can get like gender affirming surgery. Like there's like forums and forums on that stuff, and like different people just talking about their experiences, sharing pictures, sharing tips and tricks, and sharing like how to like do the injection. Just anything you could possibly want to know, like people are putting on the internet to help you, which is just absolutely huge.
Yeah. So I guess this kind of relates to like the social media question. What other than, I guess, social media has made your journey easier? If there is anything. If I know that's like a hard question and it could have just been social media, but
It for me, it's the people that I eventually found and the self work that I did and that I know I'm gonna have to continue to do. You know what I mean? Like, ugh. So it is a combination of all those things. But besides social media, definitely like being honest with the trauma that I experienced. Like just being honest and be like, that was trauma. And some of this behavior, some of these thoughts may be a result of this. And so you probably might want to check that out. So just being honest with what I experienced finally, when I gained more awareness of like, or understanding of my world or my consciousness, I guess, just being more aware of what I experienced and finding like minds that push you, and you push them and vice versa. That's kind of what helped me.
I totally second that. I feel like people frame like working on yourself as like we're learning and growing, like we're gonna like do some yoga, but it's hard. It's hard to work through like all this stuff that you just pushed away because you couldn't deal with it at the time, or like, yeah, no, that's so real. That really resonates with me. But also, yeah, I think mine would be like find queer and trans friends that are going through what you're going through, because it's kind of nice to not have to teach people like what you're going through, kind of just being like, oh yeah, doesn't that suck? Yeah, that sucks. And you're like, just like feel heard, you feel seen and understood. And for me, in terms of gender, I was so lucky in that like me and my friend met each other at like very similar points of where we were like, we're just on the precipice. Like we're barely out. Like we don't know what to do with our hair. We don't know what to do with our clothes. So we're also like the same size. So we just swapped wardrobes. And like it was like, oh no, don't do that. Like it was really, really beneficial for me to just have someone who was like doing it on the other side. Like it was really nice to have a community like that.
that's amazing. That sounds so sweet. I guess a follow-up question to that was like, how did you find those queer and trans people or people who are going through the same journey as you? Was it like online that you found them, or in real life? How did you make those friends and connections?
Going to queer spaces, seeking out like queer events, queer people doing weird stuff. But also I've like had the like great luck to work in. I worked at the National LGBTQ Task Force. I worked at the National Center for Lesbian Rights. And I've just been like hanging out with them just through work. So it was kind of easy. I've just been like in those spaces. And I think like when you look at like media portrayals of like, it's a straight friend group and they got a token queer person, that is not true. We don't hang out with straight people that much. No, I have plenty of straight friends, but
we don't.
I feel like when you're the like only queer trans person in a cis friend group, it's like that's not the ideal for like just feeling understood.
Oh, so you're talking about like media portrayals and how they have like that one really queer kid in a friend group of all like sternly cishet people. I'm just like, yeah, it definitely, whoever's watching, like that is not usually how life goes. And usually it's very uncomfortable. Usually it's very uncomfortable to be the only queer person in like those kinds of friend groups, because it's like you have to deal with all types of yeah, completely understand. Sorry.
Yeah, especially like when I looked like femme, like before I was up for it, I was like presenting the way I look now. Like people would just assume I was straight and cis, and like they'd say the most fucked up shit to me. I was like, oh no. I'm sorry, excuse my language.
No worries. No worries. We curse over here. So yeah, so thank you so much for saying that. And like, because I feel like it's important. I'm just imagining like somebody who's questioning or somebody who is queer watching this and like learning from you two about how they can go about making more friends who understand what they're going through. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I just also think that, okay, so when I came to Atlanta, I thought that Atlanta's gay, and as soon as I came here, I'm gonna be fine. I'm just gonna be everybody. I'm just gonna find my family immediately, and every gay that I meet is just gonna be so friendly and LGBT. Like people are still people at the end of the day. So like you, just because they're queer doesn't necessarily mean that y'all gonna mesh, and it's not a bad thing necessarily. You just you have to find the people who you can mesh with, you know, easily and communicate well with, you know. But yeah, I know definitely for me, I thought that as soon as I came to Atlanta, like every single Black gay on the street, every single one, I was just like, yeah, we're all gonna be friends. And you know, it's this, as far as like chosen family or people you keep close to you, it's gonna take a little bit of time. It might take some time. It might take a little bit of filtering through, but you'll get it. You'll get it. It's difficult in the beginning sometimes. It can be.
Yeah, I feel that. I moved to Atlanta in the middle of COVID, so I was like, it's just me and my house.
That's how I was when I moved to Atlanta. It's just like me and my apartment.
Yeah. So we're coming down to the last few questions. So this question, so I'll just ask it. So why is intersectionality important, especially in regards to sexuality and gender identity? And whoever thinks of an answer first can go ahead.
I mean, I think intersectionality should be important. It should be like there in every conversation, because everybody shows up in the world with like a whole host of different experiences, a whole host of different identities. They have a bunch of different headwinds and tailwinds based on like how they fit into whatever oppressive hierarchies we have going on in whatever spaces. But I think specifically just like everybody has a gender identity, everyone has a sexual orientation. And so it's like kind of pervasive through like all different social groups, all different communities. We should be talking about it more just because it does. I think at least when I was growing up, like homophobia was just like the norm. And we did not talk about trans people like that. It was just my experience. I didn't even know what it was until college. So yeah, I think we've made a lot of like huge strides towards acceptance in like the past 10, 15 years, but it's important to keep talking about it because it's not going to go away. I think people are always going to be experiencing things related to their gender and sexuality.
I think it's important because like of the divisions that we talked about before, And like knowing that there are other members within the community who have had, like you said, different experiences. They are different, but their issues deserve to be heard as well. Like what they need deserves to be taken care of as well. I think that there are certain groups that can afford, even within LGBT groups, Black LGBT groups, that like there are certain groups that can afford to ignore certain things that other people are experiencing, and it won't. They will feel like it won't affect their life. In many ways, it may not, but it's just like like I said before, if one group is at risk, everyone is. So I just think that in order to make sure people feel like if you're a part of the LGBT group, you most likely know how it feels to be ignored. So it's like, why just you don't want anyone in the group that was created or that was that moves together because they were ignored by society to feel even ignored within that community as well. So that's why like intersectionality is extremely important, because it's just going to be an endless cycle of just people trying to dominate, and it's just like why.
Right. I feel like we had the like if you're making like a kind of like side community because it's a group of people who are like being ostracized or being discriminated against in like the regular like mainstream society, like why would you then like reinscribe hierarchy in there? Like why can't we try something different? Like especially with like movement goals, like I always get so like I'm really glad that queer people can get married. That's incredible. But I don't think that should have been our first priority, because there's people who don't have access to basic resources, who don't have enough food, who don't have a place to live, who don't have access to healthcare that like reaches what they actually need. And like, yeah, marriage is great, and like formal equality under law is like important, but that shouldn't be like the only thing that we do. We need to be like meeting material needs at the very baseline.
Yeah, especially when you have people who I remember, I don't know if they say as much now, but I remember before they used that as like a benchmark. Like, y'all can get married. What else do y'all want? I'm like, wow,
I want so much.
Some housing, maybe. Like people need somewhere to like. I think priorities are really messed up.
Yep.
Yeah. And thank you for uplifting that, especially in regards to housing, because I know that there is kind of a crisis that like people don't talk about in terms of LGBTQ plus youth, being homeless and housing, healthcare. There's so many other considerations that need to be uplifted as well. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And so my last question, I kind of want to leave on a positive note. This is kind of a question that I didn't prepare y'all for, but I was curious if there's any positive queer media that you wanted to uplift. It could be videos, it could be movies, maybe books or articles that tell that end in a positive way, that you would like to let people know about. And whoever comes up with the answer first can go ahead. I know this is hard, sorry.
It is, because I'm just like, I'm trying to make sure, because you think of certain characters, it's like, make sure they're not like a token or something. Off the top of my head, there's this one movie, I think it's in Spanish. It's called Esteros on Netflix. And if it's on Netflix, I don't know. But either way, it just ends happily. Like when you said like happy ending, that's the first thing I thought of. Because when I was like growing up, or even like recently, I felt like the only gay movies or LGBT movies always ended in such horrible tragedy, or no one together, or somebody died or so. So like the first time I saw a movie that had like gay characters and it ended like realistically, but beautifully, I was like, oh wow, y'all know that that can actually happen for us. So yeah, I have that, but like I think my mind is on TV shows and movies, and I'm just thinking like a lot of times it's just like side characters, so I don't even want to.
I feel like side characters are like the butt of a joke, but I'm getting more like positive queer representation.
Like
you could always use more.
Euphoria is a crazy show, but Jules from Euphoria is cool.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like a nerd being like political theory, but
please.
I've been reading so much Dean Spade recently, and oh my God, it's just so good. And it's focused really on like how to build like horizontal organizing, like horizontal decision making and leadership, and like really like uplifting the voice and leadership of the most marginalized for like whatever you're working on. It's so good. Everybody read Dean Spade.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I guess I will uplift. There is a queer YouTuber, I believe her name is Rowan Ellis, and she makes like video essays and talks about queerness in general, and has just been really informative to like watch her videos. So I definitely want to uplift her. And so thank you so much. That's it. As much as I'd love to sit here and take up all of your day and, ask you these questions and pick your brain, I know that, it needs to end. And so thank you so much to both of you for being here, for sharing this space with us and just letting us know about your lives and giving us advice. So thank you. And so you can find Adrian at Adrian Xpression, right? On YouTube. Is it on Twitter as well?
Yeah, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that.
Okay. Do you want to shout out your Patreon since you always do?
Yeah, it's Patreon.com/Adrian Xpression. I feel like that's drilled in so many people's heads.
It is.
But yeah, that's like all the like super personal stuff and the podcasts and the stuff that I don't like put online. I mean, it's online because it's on Patreon, but like that's secret vault.
And as a patron, I could say that like it's fire content that y'all need to get into. So, and Alex can be reached at alex@sparkrj.
Yep. .org. Oh, yeah.
.org.
Thank you. It's been
Okay.
so lovely talking to you both. You're like just my favorites.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yes, I love this conversation, and thank you so much for being here and giving advice and like just being the queer representation that so many people need. So I really appreciate it. I wish I could hug both of you, but thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who watched, and have a good day. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
All right. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Thank you so much.